Hey, everybody, welcome back to the POZcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, I have a great guest today. Max Israel is the founder and CEO of Y Chroma, the award-winning Lisbon-based fashion brand reshaping the luxury market for Gen X and Boomer men. I definitely fall right into that one. Known for his mature skate and surf-inspired roots, European craftsmanship, and obsession with innovative textiles, Y Chroma has garnered global acclaim under Max's leadership. A former tech founder with a history of exits, Max brings a rare blend of creativity and strategy to the fashion world, building a brand that celebrates male midlife reinvention and promotes a century-long approach to living well. We have a
Oof,
lot to
never
dig
better
into.
said, Adam.
We have
That's
a lot to
awesome.
dig into. We have a lot to do. And I, you know what? I'm just going to talk for a second here before we jump in. First of all, Max, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
This has been a long time in the making. I'm going to tell you why. I have been admiring your brand for a while before I reached out. And kudos to your social media, paid media team. It got on my radar, got on my Instagram, got into my feed, and now I can't get rid of it. Like literally, it's like I'm not going to X out of it because I love it, but it got into my feed. And as someone who fits right into your demographic, I'm like, look at me. I wear black. This is my uniform. This is my Steve Jobs when I'm doing interviews because I feel comfortable in it. But I do like color, but I don't know how to wear it. And I've never found something that it's either too bright, too flashy. It's too much where it's like, whoa, what's he doing over there? It's not
Yeah.
incorporating into my lifestyle. So when I saw Y Chroma, I engaged. I saw the quality of it from online as best I could because there's a lot of imitators out there. There's a lot of crap you see once you get into someone's Instagram feed. And I followed and I connected with you on LinkedIn. And I started to dig into your entrepreneurial journey. I'm like, this dude isn't just a fashion designer. He has an incredible career. And that's what we're going to get into. So excited to have you on, Max.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's hit the rewind button. And what I love to when I talk to entrepreneurs, it's all about the origin story. And I find that understanding where they came from in the early days is really critical. And if you don't mind me asking, what did your parents do for a living?
That's a great question. My dad's a physician. He's retired now. He lives in Palm Springs. But my dad is a retired physician, and my mom is an artist. She's a painter and a sculptor.
You know what's so funny about that? My dad, New York, both my parents, New York City Board of Ed teachers for years. My dad was an artist, classic MFA from Pratt, wood sculptor, and went into New York City Board of Ed, art teacher, science teacher. My mom's a reading teacher. My brother's in education. So like, how the hell did Adam get into marketing and media? Now a recruiter. Where do you think that entrepreneurial spirit came from?
That's a great question. I have a tendency to think that the desire to be an entrepreneur has a lot to do with the desire to have agency, or maybe a little more agency, control over your own life and control over your own outcomes than other people, right? And this ability to control your own time, what you work on, what you do, and make that change to reflect what you need as you get older. I think that kind of desire to have extreme agency,
Mm.
as an entrepreneur, you and I are both entrepreneurs. You know what the cost of being an entrepreneur is, right? You have extreme accountability, and I think there's something to that. And people who want the extreme control over their lives, the extreme agency, and are willing to put up with extreme accountability, i.e., if there's no money in the bank, you don't get paid, and you're the last one to get paid. I think
You
that's what makes an entrepreneur.
You really hit the nail on the head. And for me, it was 10 years ago when I shifted out of the 9 to 5 after almost 20 years and into recruiting and
Whoa.
understanding that I needed to create my own success. And if I don't go
Yeah.
out and kill what I eat, no one's getting fed. And
No.
there's a drive to that, right, Max? Like there's a drive,
Yeah.
like you have a responsibility, and we'll get to it as a business owner. You have
Yeah. You got
employees,
mouths to feed, man.
you have mouths to feed there. So, but
Yeah.
let's I want to hit the rewind button for a moment. Let's stay in this is your life, Max Israel time clip here, tech. And we're hitting the rewind button, and like, what was the scene when you got into tech? Where were we at? Were we at like internet 1.0, bubble bursting? Like what drew you to the tech world?
I missed that boat. I couldn't tell you why I missed it, Adam, but I remember my first business was a business called Bridge House Foods. And I had my own brand of industrial food ingredients. I made those in the US and Canada, and I exported them. All my customers were in a dozen countries overseas. But I was an early adopter of technology. My dad, bought me an IBM PC when they first came out. I just couldn't tell you how the hell I didn't, start a tech company. It's the weirdest thing, but I started, I think I was just a little, like a year or two too soon for that. And I started a completely different business. And so what happened was, as time went on, I had my first business, which I built and sold. I owned a retail chain. And part of the way through my experience of having a retail business was that I needed a way to get feedback from my customers. There was nothing out there. And so I hired a programmer. I just couldn't figure out, I had a half dozen retail stores. I couldn't figure out how in the world I could predict the quality of customer experience, right? I'm not there every day. I can't be every place at once.
Right.
And so I hired a programmer and I created a survey online that my customers could take. And I didn't want the data. I wanted the data to go directly to my employees. And a couple of funny things came from that. The first is my customers loved filling out my little survey online. And I realized
why most people don't like filling out surveys. What was the incentive there?
Nothing. But dude, you got to realize this was maybe the first real-time survey in the world. Like
before we were inundated with feedback surveys. Like I go get an oil change and I'm getting a freaking text message. You're getting customer service.
Right.
People like delete.
It sucks, right? But it's funny you should say that. That's an interesting part of the story and how I ended up at Ychroma. So what happened was I hired a program. I built a survey online, and the answers went directly to my employees. And a couple things I figured out. The first was the quality of the grades my customers gave me on my little online survey almost perfectly predicted sales. And the second thing was, if I just showed the grades to the employees, I didn't do anything tricky or fancy. I just showed all of my employees their grades and how they benchmarked. All the grades got better. And my customers started calling me and saying, hey, I'm one of your customers. I saw your survey. Your employees are big fans of it. Can I license it? And I said, yeah. And I wouldn't, I wouldn't shut up about it. I was just so excited. And my wife at the time, my ex-wife, Beth, who was my great friend of 25 years, at some point, I think just got sick of my shit and basically fired me from that business and said, go build the software business and I'll carry the load, which is what she did. And then I went out and built this software company dedicated to surveys, which is kind of the first step. But the second part, Adam, that I think is what you're really getting at is what the hell with the surveys. About 3 years in, I realized, if I had met you at a party and I explained what I did, you'd say, that's so cool. But then the world got inundated with surveys. And if you said, what do you do? And I said, I make online surveys, you'd start looking for someone else to talk to. And at that point, I had to reinvent my survey business to go from surveys that look like the SAT test to something beautiful and interactive. And my strategy was build a tech company that created surveys that blended some very good technology with art and behavioral science. So that
UI,
the surveys
UX,
were
the design,
yeah, exactly.
the tech.
And there was storytelling there. So you had to understand what makes a story that hooks somebody. You do all the things that Adam would do. If you wanted feedback from somebody that you work with, you wouldn't just roll up like a crazy person and say, how am I doing? You would look nuts. You would show up and you'd get them to invest in you and the story by telling some things about yourself, what you're trying to do. And once you gained their goodwill, then you could safely ask them and they would tell you. I just built some beautiful design-driven technology to do that. And at first people thought I was insane, and they thought I was insane for about 3 years.
Process.
And then a big airline, a very successful airline, licensed my software and became my biggest customer. And suddenly I wasn't crazy anymore. I was a genius.
Now you're genius. So pause there for a minute, because I have a question. How does someone get into the industrial food industry? Like, why was that an area that you jumped into? Did you have a culinary background? Was there a white space for it?
Sure.
And I asked this question, my first job out of school, I worked for a food service ad agency.
Yeah.
And that world opened up to me. Our biggest client was Mott's, and I started to understand the mixer line and what went into things. And you don't think about, like, when you're 21 years old, you never think about how the world works in restaurants. And they're not going to ShopRite to pick up a 24-ounce, apple juice or ingredients. But where did that come from? I didn't mean to double back, but I'm curious.
Adam, I think you as an entrepreneur and any of your the entrepreneurs in your audience will identify with what I am about to say, which was I was deeply interested in international business,
Hmm.
and you and I are of an age where we kind of remember when international business was a thing. The kids today it's just
Well,
business,
it's
right?
globalization, right? Where it's
It's
just business
globalization.
now. Just like
Yeah,
digital marketing is just marketing.
exactly. But before the internet, when there were like fax machines, international business was hard and it was a big deal. And I became fascinated with that as an adolescent. And
Hmm.
so while I really wanted to be in international business. I was fascinated by that. And so when other kids were out, playing basketball and goofing off in the summer, I had an internship. I learned to
Hmm.
speak Japanese, and I dropped out of university my junior year because I had an amazing job opportunity in Tokyo.
Hmm.
And when I was 20 and 21, I lived and worked 100 hours a week at a job for a computer company in
You
Tokyo.
paid your dues. You got in there.
Fuck, hard, dude.
Do you
And then
think
I
that kids
came,
aren't doing that anymore? I didn't mean to interrupt, but do you think
no,
I mean, I see a lot of like the newer generation, like there are kids out there that are busting their ass and hustling, but I just
yeah,
don't like. You have to put in the hard work in this instant gratification culture.
yeah,
It's ruined motivation, in my opinion. I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's just right.
yeah. I
Like
think you
I'm
got
just
something there.
so you
Yeah.
have this fascination, right, for internet, and that's where it starts. It's a spark.
Yeah, and I came back determined to start an international trading company.
Hmm.
I wanted to take companies from their birthplace in the US, and I wanted to get the exclusive rights and export them around the world. And along the way, I was exporting construction equipment, computer equipment, food ingredients. And
Hmm.
along the way, I had two big revelations. And when I say along the way, like, and I remember I'm just a kid. I was 23 at this point. I founded the company when I was 22. By 23, 24, I was starting to see a picture here. The first was that I needed to specialize in something or I wouldn't have any credibility. And I could see that the US was an amazing producer of food products and food ingredients that the world needed. I could see opportunity. And the second thing I realized was that I needed to own the brand. Otherwise, I was just somebody's rep. And so I
Hmm.
went to all the factories and I hired a wonderful graphic designer. I don't think he's designing anymore, but he was famous. His name is Bob Rankin in Seattle, and somehow talked him into designing a brand for me, which he did. And I went to all my factories and said, I'm going to be the brand now and you're going to be the factory. And they said, okay. And for the next dozen years, I built a really neat business exporting my food ingredients. So this is a kind of the nature of entrepreneurship. You never just have a plan. You go through a door, you go through a door, you go through a door,
You don't
you
stop.
adapt, you pivot, you react, and you work your ass off. And then in 10 years, people look at you and say, wow, Adam and Max are geniuses.
How do you
What
get there?
vision? We didn't
There,
have vision. We had toughness.
we have tenacity, and there's
Yeah.
and I wrote this down. There's this common thread after 410 plus interviews at this point, speaking to incredible entrepreneurs like yourself. There's
Yeah.
this trait. There's this trait that I hear. It's this thread, and it's an acronym I call FIO. FIO. Figure it out. You're
I
always
love
striving
that.
to figure it out, Max.
Love it.
Figure
Love it.
it
Love
out.
it.
Like how do I fix this? How do I create this? How do I get this? It's ingenuity, and it's not being complacent with what you have or have built. It's listening to the market, listening to your customers, listening to your gut, and you get us there. So you build out this company and take us to IFS. You built out this, still going, right?
So what happened was I had the food ingredient company. Um, Beth and I have three kids together who are now in their 20s, but we had three little kids and we were going to our neighborhood Gymboree playing music center. Gymboree was
Yeah, of
wonderful. We
course.
loved it. But one day they told us they were going out of business and closing the door. And I was tying my daughter Lauren's shoes. And what I didn't realize at the time, by the way, I don't, people with kids, you realize how hard it is when you have little kids. Beth was just hanging on to her sanity by a thread. We had three little kids under 6 all the same time, and
God
Gymboree
bless her
was
heart.
kind of that. Yeah, but Gymboree was the thing that kept her sane, right?
It was a
And
timeout.
it was a timeout. It was great. And so I'm tying Lauren's shoes, and I said to Beth, I went to pay the bill, and they said we don't need to pay it. They're closing shop. And Beth said, without even moving her lips very much, she was like, maybe you should think about buying it. And if you'd been married for more than about 5 seconds, you knew that was a direct frickin' order.
That was
And
a
so
command. That wasn't
that
a
was
question.
there was no question.
There was no
That
debate.
was a menacing threat.
We're buying this place.
We're buying this place, and Beth's very smart and knows how to see an opportunity, and so we bought those and ended up rolling up the whole kind of Puget Sound area around Seattle.
Wow, that's
yeah.
incredible. But like, did you guys know anything about franchises at that
No.
point? Or did you have to learn
No.
what the franchise model meant and understanding the economics of it and the way financially it works out?
We did not. What we understood was that all of the Seattle area Gymboree franchises were either out of business, going out of business, or going out of business and just didn't know it yet.
But why though? Was it a market situation or was it a setup of the franchise?
They just didn't make enough money. They didn't have enough customers there. They didn't.
What, there's no kids in Seattle?
There are lots of kids. I think they just didn't. They it was a hard business to begin with. But Beth and I just closed the doors and did everything 101, marketing 101, operations 101, training 101, painted, cleaned, retrained, opened the door. I think that business had never done 50,000 a year until, for decades, for 30 years until we bought it. And then we did 50,000 in the first 90 days, or
Boom.
I think the first 90 days, like the first 30 or 60 days. And then we just rolled. We were broke. We did this thing on chutzpah and overdraft protection, man. We didn't have any money.
Welcome. Yeah, I thank you for saying that because that makes me feel better about my Amex bill right now. Right? You just you'll pay it off one way or another.
You're going to pay it off
one way or another, alive or dead. I'm going to pay it off one way.
You got it, brother. You got it.
It gives you the fuel. I mean, I love this story. So you have the Gymborees, and I want to wrap it up before we get to the Ychroma story. But talk about this tech company that came out of.
Yeah, and so that process of running those Gymborees, we needed a way to So we had now 2 businesses at once. So just put yourself in my shoes and try and grok the insanity of this.
Plus 3 kids under 6.
We have the food ingredient, which is growing like crazy, and the food ingredient business. We have these Gymborees, and we're adding them. I needed a way to get feedback from our customers, so I started this little software thing. It was really just a side project, right? And then the Gulf War happened, right? And I'm sorry, the Iraq War happened, and
right.
Everybody,
the Gulf War was in '92. I'm like, you're not that old, man.
This is the Iraq.
You're not that old. Yeah.
No. But everybody knew this was going to happen. People talk about foreign policy stuff. I can just tell you, everybody doing business in the region, doesn't matter who you are. We all knew sooner or later Saddam Hussein had to go. Nobody living there or working there was under any illusion. Neither was.
There was a cauldron, right? Mm-hmm.
It was, yeah. What happened was that for about 6 months after the war started, you couldn't get container ship space, and I basically went out of business. Bridge House Foods went out of business. I sold the business to my suppliers and enough to clear the decks. And now Beth and I went through some very hard years. We're broke. We have no money. We have all of these Gymborees. We have all of these employees. I go to bed every night knowing exactly how much is in that bank account. And to this day, on the 20th and the 5th of the month, no kidding, I still wake up with my heart beating a little faster because those are payroll days, right? And so what happened was we're in this situation where we're just fighting to stay alive. We're constantly 30 days behind in our mortgage. I had this really interesting software tool that I realized could be a business. And a lot of people would have said, fold, get a job, do something, but we just doubled down. And I started, trying to go out and sell to get other people to pay to use the software that I had built. And we just kind of worked through that. And along the way, the software business became a bigger and bigger and bigger business. Does that make sense?
Of course it does.
And so
it's
finally,
funny how that works. Yeah.
It is. And then we sold off the Gymborees, and I just focused on the software company was called Customerville, and built that business over more than 15 years. And in 2021, IFS, I think it's public. I don't know if it's public or not. I don't know if I can say it, but I mean, they paid me a 8-digit number for it, paid a huge amount of money for. So it was a wonderful moment for us, right? This thing that was an afterthought.
Let's talk about that moment, right? Like the financial, I mean, every entrepreneur and founder, the ultimate goal for most is an exit. I shouldn't say ultimate goal, right? Yeah. Everyone kind of thinks differently. Some do it for longevity. Some people think, I want to exit and build what's next, see what's coming up next. But that moment when you sold it, what did that feel like emotionally? Did you feel like you were losing a child or gaining an opportunity to build what's next?
Oh, God. What did that feel like? It was intense relief. I mean, this was the pandemic. It was in the middle of the pandemic. Do you remember Russell Crowe was in that movie Mastering Commander? Do you remember that movie? And there's that opening scene. For those of your listeners who aren't familiar with the movie, go out, stop what you're doing after this podcast. Go watch it or read the books. Amazing movie. In the opening scene of the movie, he's the commander of a ship and they're attacked by pirates and he gets knocked down and he's concussed. And he hears his ears ringing. He can't see. He's standing up and they're cannon. It's terrifying. It's amazing Ridley Scott cinematography, right? Splinters everywhere, people bleeding, people screaming, and he's got to stand up in command. And he just does it. Even though he can't hear and he can't see, he's on autopilot. I think that's how I felt. I would love to tell you that it was a moment of joy and rejoice. I think it was, but it was tough. But now it was brutal.
But now your deck is cleared, but your bank account is fat.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, like a lot of, I know many entrepreneurs. I worked for IFS for a year because that was a deal. And IFS is one of the best managed organizations I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of corporate environments, but I was counting the days. I need to be an entrepreneur. And I had this vision for reasons we can discuss about starting a different kind of fashion brand. And it was, there really probably wasn't a choice. It was going to happen. So I built this beautiful, designy, arty software company, probably drawing on the surgeon father and the artist sculptor, mother parts of me. And
now we're getting to the good stuff here. Now we're getting deep here. So
people think of me as a CEO, tech CEO. I'm not. I'm a glorified creative director, basically, who knows how to run the business. And
so
yeah.
But you've had this passion for aesthetics and pride in how you look and how you present yourself in public. Well, where was that first seed planted of, I would love to create my own line, my own designs? How far back was that seed? Was that something that was always kind of in the background, or did it really bloom in this moment after the exit?
Oh, I can tell you exactly the moment. I know the moment. I love clothes. For years, part of my personal brand was wearing a suit. And because I don't know how many of your listeners know this about me, but
well, they'll find out now.
They're going to find out now. But most of my adult life has been spent in Spain. So in my late 30s, Beth and I had the genius idea of moving to Valencia, Spain, with our 3 little kids, and we ended up staying there. And so I have dozens and dozens of suits made by the person Agustin Garcia, who I regard as the finest tailor in the world alive today in Madrid. And I had dozens and dozens of suits from Agustin Garcia. They're beautiful garments. And that was part of my brand. If you met me on the street at any time in for almost 20 years, I was wearing that, right? And then during the pandemic, there just something happened where I realized I was always the only man in the building in a suit. Unless I was meeting with a financial services client, because some of the biggest enterprises in the world used my company's software. And I, as a CEO, I'd go meet with these people. Very often, I'm the only guy with a suit. But that was okay because my suits were cool and it was part of my brand. But I knew that had to change. When I went to change my look, I was really disappointed is an understatement at what's out there for men. The business, the world wants men to, especially like around 50, they want you to kind of fade into the background. It's a youth obsessed culture. Older, men older than their 30s are really encouraged to wear navy blue and gray and stuff like that. I didn't want that. And so I had a home at the time in Paris, and I was there and I was watching an interview with chairman of LVMH Group. And Adam, these guys are Louis Vuitton.
Yes.
This is among the richest humans in the world, by the way.
Bernie, right?
Yeah. And the journalist asked him, like, wow, I can't remember what sales were at the time. It's in the, it's an enormous enterprise and many, many, many billions of dollars. And he says, "What's your game plan? What are you going to do in the next few years?" And Bernard says, "I'll tell you, I think we're going to double the business." And the journalist was gobsmacked, right? But
bold
to his credit,
it
was right. And he kind of gets his act together, and he says, "So how are you going to do that?" And he goes, "Well, I'll tell you, I think it's mostly people under the age of 30." And I remember thinking, I've made pretty good money for a long time. I have 3 children. None of them are wearing $1,000 sweatshirts. So something is wrong here. And I went out to dinner and I sat down and I sketched out the idea of a brand that was kind of mixing, this kind of skate and surf and BMX and snowboard culture that, if you're my age, you came up in that, right? The kids today like to wear Vans and wear these kind of, at least kind of brands from back in the day that are vintage and cool.
Champion's coming back.
Exactly. But we literally invented that. That was
Yeah.
literally our stuff.
Starter jackets, champion sweatshirts. That was my generation.
Totally. They don't even know, though, that was that we invented that, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted to create a different kind of brand that would help men wear color tastefully. I needed men to look more casual, but never look down market. And I couldn't find anything like that. Like things that were cut and colored for a guy who wasn't an 18-year-old swim team captain,
Right.
flattered his body. He could wear color well and not feel like he was a child or a clown or something.
Right. You don't look like you're going to a 3rd grade dance, right? You're
yeah.
not.
Well, I'm going to use that. That's a great line. I don't know.
Say 6th grade. 6th grade and 3rd graders aren't. Yeah. 6th grade. Fine.
Yeah. And so I resolved to do it. And I don't remember, I think it was 2021. I don't remember. That was probably 2020, 2021. And I just knew I had to do it then, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And today, Y Chroma is what it is. That all came back to that back of the, literally back of the napkin. The back of the napkin is usually a euphemism. This was literally the back of the napkin at my apartment in Paris. And today,
let me tell you something. It's not back of the napkin. I've had and I don't know if you're familiar with Dara. He's ran 11 Madison Park here in New York. He's one of the top hospitality experts in the world too. His idea was back of napkin too, and there is really some.
Yeah.
You never know when inspiration is going to hit you. You never know. So I want to talk about starting this company, but first and foremost, I think it's critical where the name comes from. Why Chroma?
I'm gonna tell you that, but first, I just remembered something. The idea for my software company was written on the back of a barf bag. I was on an airplane and I had this idea, hey, if I could create a survey and create a dashboard that my employees would see in real time, and I think I might still have the barf bag somewhere. So back of the napkin, back of the barf bag, when that hits you guys, you grab whatever you got, write it on the back of your hand, write it on your buddy's shirt, do whatever you do, but capture that idea, right? Don't let it go.
Don't let it go. So now, listen, and this isn't like your first rodeo, so you know how to build a business, and you also know that there's identify a market, identify a need. Yep. You were the ideal customer. You are the ICP of this product. You were designing a brand for you, so you could have something to wear that you're proud of, that meets the aesthetic, the quality, and the emotional connection. Where I feel fucking good in what I'm wearing, and I'm confident to wear color. Right. And I talked about that before. For me, like I've colored T-shirts. I have a couple of items that are colored. But for me, I never feel comfortable being bright and bold. And now on the other side of that, my friend Chris Adamo, 30 years plus, years ago, I think it's been 4 years now, 5 years maybe, someone gave him a Jam shirt. Remember Jams? Yeah. Like the skater surfer shirts, like their Hawaiian kind of shirts. Yeah. He's embraced it, where I think for 5 years straight, he's worn a Jam shirt every single day, and that's been his brand. And he embraced color and boldness, and it's also been a conversation starter for him. Yeah. An icebreaker. And he's embraced the brand there. So let's take back to the early days. I mean, now we're talking, 4 years ago. You have an idea, you understand manufacturing, you understand process, but what was that first kind of hurdle or speed bump, Max, that kind of smacked you in the face a little bit? Maybe a hypothesis that was proven wrong, or something about manufacturing or distribution that was a challenge in that early days of getting this brand off the ground?
Well, I think that's a good, any entrepreneur will tell you, like, people want you and society wants you to stay in your lane. And so the fashion industry is not a particularly welcoming industry. It's actually a pretty dysfunctional industry, if I'm being honest with you. But I was already pretty much immune to that, having, told everybody in my life, I'm going to move to Japan. And they thought I was nuts, but then I did it. I'm going to start a business at 22, and we're going to sell industrial cake mix in Saudi Arabia, even though my name is Israel.
Mm.
Everybody told me I was insane, but I just did it. And so at this point, I kind of know now if I say I'm going to do something and people say I'm crazy, that usually means it's a good idea. So the first thing that hit me in the face was just people saying, you know nothing about fashion. We expect fashion, people who start successful fashion brands are 25-year-olds or something. And what makes you think you can do that? And I'm seasoned enough to no longer get my back up when somebody says, what makes you think you can do that? And I just like, oh, those poor guys, they don't understand. And society wants you to stay in your lane. Adam works in corporate America. You're going to start something. Adam works in,
Right.
works in the placement business and the HR sector. What makes him think he can be a successful podcaster? And I know something about your business. Your audience may not know. You're a very successful podcast. You have very good sponsors and
Thank
all
you.
those things. So what makes you think you can do that? Nothing, right?
It's all in here.
Yeah, it's all in here. So I think we definitely have something to that. That was the first thing that hit me in the face, but I was ready for it and I hit back. It's as simple as that.
So when you're for anybody out there, like where does the mind start? Is it a single piece? Is it a collection? Is it a mood board aesthetic? Like where do you go to start and to proof of concept and proof of like you're not going out there creating 30 pieces out of the gate, right? That's not what you
Yeah.
do.
No, I had a general sense. If you want something to look right, it should reflect what the culture was when somebody was young, when they were in their teens and 20s. And so I knew that it was possible to up level kind of skate and surf clothing that we grew up in into something using couture fabrics and to make it work. And so I started by creating
Quality.
a mood board. Yeah. And
Hmm.
then the next thing, and any entrepreneur, in your audience will know this. So you go through the phase of research. I hired a researcher. I started digging into the numbers to understand my market, to see how many guys like me are there out there. And then hiring consultants, reading books, watching YouTube channels, the authors and YouTube channels that made sense to me about people in the fashion business. I called them and I hired them as consultants. And so, but I'd done for the first year, I did nothing but get smart and speed date. You kiss a lot of frogs. Some of these people, you have a great coffee, great meeting. It's not the right one.
Nope.
And then you're always going to get lucky. And one of the luckiest breaks I got was I was introduced to a wonderful designer named Nikolai Pachev, Nicky. Nicky's an award-winning designer. He's on the faculty of a famous university in Sofia. And for people who don't know, I'm in Europe right now. I'm in Lisbon and my life is in Europe. So that's how I got to meet Nicky. And you're always going to meet that powerful, catalyst. Nicky was one of those people. He's my best example. And so immediately I went from getting researchers, getting points on the board, getting smart, and being willing to be a beginner to starting to put together my core team. And then with Nicky's help and Nicky's guidance, I was able to put together kind of our launch line. And with some other help from wonderful collaborators, including our dear friend Laura Jean in London, we were able to kind of fast track what would normally take a decade in terms of supply chain relationships and
Right.
meeting factories, going to meet them and looking them in the eye. And they took me seriously. Now I had to invest. If you're going to start a fashion brand, be ready to write $1 million plus check. I can just tell
Right.
you that right now.
I mean,
No shortcuts.
samples, materials, like
Inventory,
trial and error and
photography,
inventory.
everything.
But let's kind of hit the rewind button for a moment here. Before that, like you have to proof of the market and the marketing strategy. Let's lift up the hood here. And what was the plan? Solely direct to consumer e-commerce versus retail. What was the thoughts and approach here out of the gate?
I want to own that. Having come from, a decade and a half in the customer experience management business, that's what my software did. It helped companies understand their customer experience and improve it. So I had a razor sharp set of instincts around what makes a great customer experience. And I'll just tell you right now, I have no interest in selling it through retail stores. I want to own that customer experience. And I'll tell you why. Ychroma, which, by the way, I think you know this, your listeners may not, is that Ychroma is a play on words. The Y.Chroma is kind of a play on words referring to the male Y chromosome. As biological males, we have both a Y and an X chromosome, but chroma is also chromatic.
Color.
And so it was a play on words for my desire to bring color to how men dress.
And it's almost like why color? Why? Here, like here's the answer.
Right. It could be a question,
there's many different ways to interpret it. It works. And it's catchy and it's short. It's catchy, it's short, it flows. Because the Y chromosome is not intuitive, and you're like, oh yeah, the chromosome too. Like the first time I saw it, I literally interpreted it as Y color.
Yeah,
that was my first take on. That was my first take. Maybe there's a little marketing head in me or something. And we talk about the colors too. I mean, we're gonna get to that in a moment here. But going back to the initial investment, like you're thinking about the pattern and ownership, and you're getting it. What were those first couple of pieces? And anyone out there, obviously go to the link, go to ychroma.com. We're gonna link it up. We also have a special offer at the end for everyone listening. We'll get to that. But like, was your head all over the place, or how did you narrow in on a palette to start with? So maybe you're, baby feeding folks out there, or did you come out of the gate strong and be like, here's a freaking rainbow, guys?
You got to come out of the gate strong. I don't want to, it's interesting is women will have, let's talk about the market.
Please.
Women will have 20 brands in their closet or 30 brands in their closet. A man will have 3. I don't want to sell the guy a shirt. I want the whole closet. I wanted to create a system. I know this sounds nerdy and not very fashiony, but I wanted a system. I wanted to be, my customers are the same guys who, if they decide to buy a snowblower, are going to watch YouTube videos and educate themselves. And then they're going to spend a bunch of money to buy the snowblower made in Iceland because it's the best one in the world.
Right. Like water filtration systems. I have friends like that too. They're like skiers. They're like, no, this is a custom made. This is the best of the best.
Yeah, look at you, dude. You're sitting around $25,000 worth of equipment just on the screen right now. You got smart,
a little less than that, but I went for the top of the line. But it took me a while to get here to know that why the quality is important.
Yes, right.
But that's a journey too. The quality is not everyone's born with quality, but when you understand what the investment is from a long-term perspective, and especially with clothing, like I think about those staple pieces in my closet, my few Barbados pieces I have in there that I spent money on, my couple of nice suits that I have, they're staples. And when I wear them, I feel good, and I feel like great. I'm wearing, like even right now, like I'm wearing I went in the last couple of years, t-shirts all Saints. They fit me well. The quality is there from that perspective. It's a good price point for me, and I feel comfortable. But now I'm ready to take it up a notch.
I'll take you up a notch on that. You just wait. When you wear one of our I think we got famous for our t-shirts. That's one of the things we realize is that the editors of the fashion, they do the fashion review. Our website has all these logos, and people go, how the hell does a new brand get, a dozen, companies to give Editors' Choice Awards? I'll tell you a secret. The editors of all these guys are 50-year-old dudes like me. Yep. And so when they got the clothes designed for their body, of course they gave us the award. But the market thing is so interesting. The fashion industry is an enormous industry. Depending on how you slice it, it's it's $1 trillion business. What's weird about this is men who have, if you look at a chart that shows how much money you have, you're a 20-year-old, you don't have any money, you don't have a pot to piss in.
Right. And we're not talking about trust fund babies here. We're talking about average 20-year-olds.
The regular guys, right? And so, as the next decades go by, that the number that represents your kind of net worth goes up and up and up and up and up. And if I also put on that chart how much you spend on how you present yourself on your clothes, that number also goes up and up and up and up and up until your 50th birthday. And then your wealth continues to go up, but the amount that you spend on clothes drops off a cliff. And the fashion industry will have you believe that's because at a certain point, you don't care how you look, right? You don't care how you present yourself. And so they just block you out. So the fashion industry really has, you look at the models, they're all 20.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. And so I thought that's wrong. And when we dug into it, what you realize is that kind of men 45, 50 and older, right or wrong, some of these are households and some of them are just men, control the vast majority of discretionary spending in the world. And yet they are totally blocked out of fashion. There's no fashion brand for them. They should just go straight to grandpa clothes. And I thought, well, if I can speak to that as a founder-led brand, and I can say, and remember, Adam, this isn't just about clothes. This is about the idea of, hey, you're 50 now. Are you going to quietly go away and fade into the background and hit the shuffleboard or the golf course or whatever and glide path to death? Or have you looked at your actuary table and realized that you're statistically likely to live well, vigorously, to be 100 years old? And are you going to go surprise people? You can have a second full-throated career? Are you going to pivot and do some things that shock and change people's opinion and views of you? Are you going to continue to accelerate? If you are, then goddamn it, dress like it. They should see you that way. And that message, which came right from my heart, it's exactly how I feel, really resonated with these guys. That's why the brand just took off. All of a sudden, all these guys who had no brand they identified with, they weren't satisfied with their clothes at all. Suddenly they realized, here's a founder looking right at the camera saying, this is awkward for me too. I'm an introvert. I'm not an extrovert, but I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. And this is why. And I'll show you everything I'll make. I'll turn the stuff inside out. I'll show you every little detail we sweat over. And people went bananas for it.
Yeah. I mean, you take a look at the website too. And I think, well, first of all, it's a great website. I mean, I'm looking. So I have it down here because I want to talk about a couple pieces. And this geisha jacket, by the way, is killer. And I want everyone to take a look and understand what we're doing here, what he's doing here, right?
Yeah.
The team is put together. It's a design aesthetic where it's a piece that people are going to talk about. They're going to notice you because you are standing out. Because you're standing out in a sea of sameness. Right? Like you're standing out in a sea of sameness right now, and it's representing you. It's representing the quality there. And when folks that are listening, I hope that you're clicking on this website as I am talking about it on the show, because I'm doing the same thing now. And there's colors that are in your face. There's colors that are a little bit more muted. And it's also about trying to embrace this concept of finding your style and taking chances and kind of figuring it out here. You have this anecdote about the yellow sweater touches on cultural norms and role models. Could you explain that to everybody? Because I think this is a really good peek into what this is all about.
Sure. I love that yellow sweater. I think that's my favorite thing we ever made was that power cable sweater in Spectre yellow. It became sort of, it was on some of our packaging and some of our media stuff, and it became widely associated with us. And I'll answer this in two ways. If you want to understand how men wear color, well, all of this comes, and I didn't invent this, by the way. I was taught this. Nikki, our principal designer, Nikki, taught me this. It all comes from military uniform history. So you imagine a pyramid. The broad base of the pyramid are camouflage colors, right? Naturally occurring colors, so you don't get shot. Right? You can blend in. They're navy blue, black, brown, olive, white.
The mission was to not get shot. Men's fashion started with not getting shot. Maybe that's why the red coats were getting knocked out, because they were freaking wearing red coats. And I could see you.
Terrible idea.
I don't have night vision glasses back 300 years ago.
I don't need it.
You're fucking red. I could see you, and I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to load up my musket gun. You're giving me enough time because I can still see you. I still see you. You're not going anywhere. Hold on. Let me reload this thing.
You're standing right there in white pants. Yeah. I think by the time you got around to
white pants are not good for military, by the way.
They're really, really not. And wool, and they were made of wool in the start. But by the 19th, 20th century, that's how military uniforms were, right? And then on top of that, the kind of next level up in the pyramid are colors that connote rank, right? Orange, bright red, greens, things like bright greens, turquoise blue, rank colors for dress uniforms. And so when you see a guy that is wearing color and it just works, and the guy looks great, he's so well dressed, how does he do that? All he's doing consciously or subconsciously is channeling the pyramid. He's got a certain ratio and a certain coordination of these naturally occurring colors like olive, khaki, tan, blah, blah, blah. And on top of that, colors that add accent, so he doesn't look like confetti. And so we wanted to be able to explain that. We put together a half dozen color families that are named after cities I have lived in. And basically a guy comes in the door and says, I want to wear color. I don't know what I'm going to do. My job is to give him two things. The first is to say, well, let's look at a half dozen color palettes and figure out which is the right one for you. Explain the thing I just explained to you about the lineage of men's fashion being in military officer uniforms. And then right away, guys will zoom in and say, oh, I like the Tokyo color palette, or I like the Seattle color palette, or the Valencia color palette. And then the next step is, hey, I want to look at your closet. And when you ask me, well, Max, how did you figure out the right pieces? I took every single thing out of my closet, and then I designed what are the pieces I need if I wanted to have the perfect wardrobe. I would have these sweaters, these overshirts, these t-shirts, these pants for dressy occasions, these
core elements, right?
These core
interchangeable
elements. And then I wanted them to be a system where you could shut your eyes and grab two things, and you're always going to look hot, right? And when I say hot, I mean hot. Like there is this weird expectation that a guy, you pass 40 and you no longer own a solid, sexy look. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on your podcast, bro, but bullshit on that.
Please.
That is total bullshit. And so by putting, explaining the color system and creating a color system a guy could understand, and you see the light bulb go off, and then understanding the pieces he needs, all of a sudden people just are ready to go. And you'll see these guys having a renaissance. That's
right. And I
what
want
I
everyone to
love.
look. Like I'm on the site right now, and we're looking at the collections, right? And as Max mentioned before, there's Lisbon, Paris, Seattle, Tokyo. You could take a look if you're just starting here and be like if
Yeah.
I'm kind of looking at this off the record, like my comfort zone would probably be Seattle, but I'm kind of feeling this calling to Lisbon and Paris, kind of like. And you could start
Yeah.
to like wrap your head around like what am I feeling, and like how much do I want to initially start to step out of
Yeah.
my comfort zone? Do I want to just
Yeah.
go full spectrum and then like make a splash, or like, you know what, I'm going to dip my toes and maybe have a little bit of my comfort level and kind of get there. That's the beauty of it. So fast forward to where we are today, Max. How many years now since we started? 3 at this point? 4 since
Yeah.
pandemic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
How's growth? How are we doing here?
We're doing great. I say we're doing great, but growth is its own set of challenges. Manufacturing and fashion is very hard. The pieces we make, everything is made in Europe. All the textiles are made in Europe. Revenue in 2024 was literally 4 times what it was in 2023. And so this, anytime you have a successful business, you have your own set of pain points surrounding growth. I'm in a building right now full of people, some of whom, honestly, the business doesn't need today, but absolutely they will need in 6 months. And so I'm constantly hiring ahead of the curve. So I have seasoned, qualified employees, so they can offer the, kind of the most premium customer experience in the fashion world. By the way, the best part of this whole thing is meeting the customers. I talk to them. We talk to them on wardrobe planning calls. They can have a Zoom meeting. We talk to them. We figure out their color palette. We figure out what their lifestyle is. We get to know the guy, and then we give him a plan that says, "Here's your palette. Here's your outfit. Here are the pieces. Here's how they fit together." Just today, I spent, and I try and join as many of these as I can because it's the best part of the gig.
It's a real-time feedback.
It's real time, but also just
You
like
have to have your ear to the customer, right? You have to see, because that's a brand. Like that's what brand is more than an affiliation. Like it's like this represents me. This is what I wear. Like, I was referencing my friend Chris with the jam. Like there's an affiliation, and it's like I'm not saying it's a badge of honor, but it kind of is. It's like this. I feel good about this.
Yeah,
I feel good when I'm wearing it. I feel confident. I feel like I'm my best self. So I'm going to rock it. And when you hear that, that's what drives you as a business owner, as a designer, right?
It is. But not just that. What I want them to feel, like a fashion brand, people who are not in the fashion industry, it's common to refer to a fashion brand as a fashion house. Right. The House of Y Chroma is here for that generation. I love the clothes, but clothes are a bridge. This is part of my personal going from being a tech guy to someone deeply immersed in something deeply artistic. And after 25 years, Beth and I parted ways, and right around the time of the pandemic, right before the pandemic. So I'm reinventing my
your personal
relationship life. I'm reinventing my where I live. I moved from Valencia to Lisbon. I'm reinventing my career. This process of reinvention is awkward, painful, and blissfully beautiful and necessary. And so the clothes are just a bridge. They say what you wear says a lot to the world about who you are. It helps them see you, but it helps you see yourself, right? And so what I care about is the fact that I have this kind of brotherhood now, and it's not the biggest company in the world. It's probably only about, I don't even think there's 20,000 people, right? Probably a couple thousand diehard customers. So we're still a small business in that sense. But if you could put these guys in a room, every one of them didn't just be like, "Oh, I found a brand. I feel like I'm part of a club." It's not like that, dude. It's like they feel like these people understand me. They all went through that painful moment of feeling, I have this dull ache that says something's wrong. And I need to go address that. And that means I need to reinvent myself because I realized, as you mentioned earlier, I'm going to live for 100 years. What am I going to do if your first 20 years doesn't count? You're a kid, right? And then the next 20 years, you're raising kids, you're figuring out how to make money, you're doing all that. We got raised to believe that this is the point where you make some money and now you retire in golf. And that's just bullshit. No. If life is a 3-act play, 50 means you have finished the first act. And you better have a plan, a vigorous, serious plan for how you're going to have a full next 2 acts. And what I love about the House of Y Chroma and this feeling you get from our customers, every single one of them, is this feeling like they are fired up they feel like for the first time, fired up to go do those next 2 acts with style. And
Damn,
that means
man.
something to me.
That is marketing 101 right there. Creating that emotional connection to a brand where it's more than something you wear. It's something that makes you feel a certain way and take action. I love it,
Yeah.
man. Like and you hit the nail on the head there. Like I think I'm in like the middle of my second act right now. Lots of good, bad, ugly,
You're a
but
kid.
growth.
You're 46. What are you, 46?
Turning 46, and this show will be out after I just turned 46, coming out mid-March here. But
I'm challenging your. Sorry, no, stop. I'm challenging your podcast math. Your first 20 years, you were just a kid, and then you were just figuring life out, right?
Still
if
a
you're
schmuck.
46,
Yeah.
you are. you are if you are God willing, you don't have any dicey DNA in there, right? But look yourself up on an actuary table, right? You are statistically quite likely, you take good care of yourself, you're likely to live to be 100 years old. Look at the math. You are not partway through the second act. You are wrapping the first act. People don't even. This is the pre-game show for Adam. Adam Posner is going to do thing. The second act is where we see what you really are. And I think people look around and say, Adam's finally arrived. He's got big sponsors. He's got this successful podcast we all listen to. No, you are seeing this. Keep your eye on Adam. Adam's going to have his second act and a third act that are going to blow all of our minds. And I don't ever let a guy get away with saying, I'm kind of trying to figure out what my last
putting
act.
It out there.
No.
We're going to manifest it. We're manifesting it. Because you know what? My tagline is make shit happen. Yeah. If I feel something, I make shit happen. I wanted Max on the podcast. I love his brand. I'm getting him on, and we're doing this, and we're building a rapport because I'm making shit happen. There's a brand I like that the next time you see me on stage in Vegas in March, I'm going to be rocking my Ychroma. And I'm like, hey, check out this podcast that came out 2 weeks ago, and this is what it looks like here. Because that's how things happen. Wait, I want to dig in here.
It is. Yeah.
You describe primary competition as, quote, inaction. I'm literally reading the question here, and I never do this. How do you, this is podcasting 101, never read the question, but I love this question here, so I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's my show. It's like, right? One of my favorite, I grew up in the world of house music, one of my favorite DJs, a longtime legend DJ, Danny Tenaglia. In the middle of a set years ago, listening to him, he just plays the record. It was a great house disco track, and he plays it to the end and lets it just fade out. And he doesn't mix in the next record. And he stops and goes, you know what? I could do whatever the hell I want. And I want you to enjoy that record for what it is and hear it to the end, because that's the composition there. But you did. I just went off on a tangent there. You describe primary competition as inaction. How do you approach marketing or messaging to inspire action among men who may feel stuck or apathetic?
I don't market. Honestly, people ask, the number one question I get asked, because I answer, I respond directly to, the comments I get on social media. People ask, who's your agency? Who writes your copy? I don't do any of that, man. I think you know me well enough just in these discussions to know that I don't, I just let her rip. This is me. And so from my point of view, I just point the camera, they point the camera at me, and I just let her rip, and I never pull any punches. And so the downside to that is there's a huge amount of hate on the internet. You could see, I think if you don't have haters, you're not doing it. Haters,
right? Like haters mean people are watching and listening, and I've been learning that
they
lately.
They write shit in the comments, and they say, like, I don't have earrings on today, but I like earrings. So why would we take fashion advice from somebody wearing a pink sweater? Or you look gay. You look, I
mean, those are just ill-informed
people,
idiots,
bigots. Bigots. And I was like, wow, they still make people like that who say shit like that?
Yeah. Well, you spend too much time in Europe. Come back to the States here. You'll see what's happening over here.
Yeah. So I think
you're doing all right over there, man.
So I just
not that there's no heat in Europe, but plenty. Yeah.
But you punch right through that. You just keep focused on your message, and my message is comes from the heart. I'm not going to back down on that, and people respond to it.
What are your thoughts on fast fashion? I mean, I've seen these videos lately coming to my feed of just the style now of trends going in and out, and overproduction and killing the environment and lack of sustainability. And you see these mountains of clothes in third world countries just burning and not recycling and not upcycling or any of that. Like, this is a real problem.
It is. Yeah.
And the pollution from manufacturing, let's not lie. Let's not beat around the bush. There's a lot of pollution created in any textile manufacturing. There's a lot of secondary product. Yeah.
It's appalling. for those who are interested in this, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the website, and there's a video we made on this. I think I'm the only fashion CEO in the industry to do this. I sat down and walked through every single step of how we produce things.
Oh, I didn't even watch it. I see it right here. Yeah.
Yeah, there was just this, there are kind of three angles. This one is, how are we going to make things without taking advantage of people? You talk about a t-shirt that costs $20 or something, just work the math on that backwards in your head. For that retailer to be in business, they must sell. They're not greedy. For them to make a tiny net profit margin, they have to sell for 4 to 5 times what they paid for it.
Right,
and so
4 or 5x.
Right, 4 or 5x. Otherwise, they can't pay the rent and pay their taxes and pay their employees, etc. And so how did this T-shirt get made somewhere and get shipped around the world, materials, labors, and everything for $3 or $4? Somebody is getting taken advantage of, right? And my customers would never, ever. My stuff's expensive. It is a real investment. It's not cheap stuff, but because everything is made to not just to the highest degree of quality, but we source ethically all of our fabrics here in Europe. Because 2 of the biggest polluters in the world are India and China, and that's where most fast fashion textiles are made.
Yeah, look at your label, folks. Take a look at the label.
Yeah,
you may think like I bet you if I turn the label on this All Saints shirt, it's going to say Vietnam or somewhere else. Yeah.
There's no way on earth that makes that if when you really drill down that you don't want everybody who buys my stuff and most of your listeners probably make enough money that they don't need somebody else to get screwed for them to get a deal on this.
Well said.
But then the other thing is just the car. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, none of our children can. I mean, children are brilliant. My children are fucking brilliant. They're all in their 20s. They're incredibly sharp people, but they can't even keep their rooms clean. Right? I don't know how they're going to clean the planet.
My 12 and 7-year-old. Geez, I'm literally laughing right here.
Yeah, but so we're going to leave them a dirty planet to clean up?
No.
And so my job here in that sense is recognize that that we only produce things where we can trace that supply chain as far back as we can and know that the supply chain is clean and ethical. I write a check every year to an organization called Gold Standard. We don't make a big deal about it. I never put it in marketing. I've never talked about it publicly before this moment. But I'll tell you, we buy a 30 kilogram Gold Standard carbon credit offset for every single garment we produce. And then the last thing is make stuff that's designed to last for years. Things like, some of the outerwear will last the rest of your life. If it needs to be repaired, I'll do that for free forever. If something goes wrong with it, I will take it back and upcycle it myself forever.
I love that. Yeah. That's a customer service side though that you've been ingrained with since you started your first company, because that's your core. That's a core of any successful business. Is right. Remember when all these big enterprise, they offshored all their customer service, third world, and what happened? People were fucking pissed. I'm an American Express Gold card holder, and I'm talking to someone in another country that I can't even understand. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but that degrades the quality of your experience. And the companies were saving and making all this money, but they were losing customers. And then they're like, wait, shit.
Yeah.
That's a primary contact point of one of our customers. That has to be quality. That's how we keep and retain.
You know what I think is sad about what you just said? First of all, Adam, you're right. You're dead right.
Sadly,
but I think that brands really flushed a huge amount of goodwill and credibility. And to this day, when I say that our biggest obstacle is inertia, right? Inaction. I don't look at other fashion brands and say, oh, it's my competition. I look right through them. They don't exist. The only thing that exists is my customer. And is he going to walk out the door feeling better today, feeling great about how he looks? And is that going to translate? The number one thing is that he looks at my stuff and very often they go, Matt, is this guy AI generated? Like, is he a real guy? Because there's so much cynicism. This can't possibly be
real.
An
avatar?
But they really think that. And so when I text, anytime I see a new order come through, I'm like, this sounds great. I'm like in the bathroom, or like I'm on the treadmill or something. And I see a new order and I don't recognize his name. I can see this for sure. I will send him a text directly and they're like, is this really Max? Absolutely. I'll send him a selfie. Like, tell me what I see. We welcome to the house of Ychroma. That's thing you're talking about where companies offshored a lot of things, created cynicism and distrust. And it's such a shame because now we got to go back. Brands like Ychroma have to show we're the real thing. We have real people who care about your outcome.
Battle.
It's an uphill battle. It didn't need to be.
But also some people aren't meant to be your customers, right? There's a target where they haven't been exposed to your brand yet, and those are going to be customers. And some people, and I'm learning this too, not everyone is meant to be a customer. Not everyone's meant to be a friend. Not everyone, right? It's about, as you get older, you start to realize what's important here. So to that point, I never asked this one. I never asked this question. Again, I'm doing the thing I never do. If you could go back and give one piece of advice to young Max on how to be the best version of yourself, your style, confidence, or life, what would you tell 25-year-old Max? I never asked that cliche question. Jeez, I'm on a roll today.
It is. When I was talking to my daughter, Lauren, about this over Thanksgiving. We were hanging out at my dad's house in Palm Springs, and she said, gosh, it's so stressful. Lauren's moving, she's a PhD candidate. She's moving. She's stressed about money. She said, when do you stop being stressed about money? I said, I was stressed about money every day of my life. Am I doing the right thing? Am I failing? And is it going to be okay? And like, she couldn't believe it. She was actually really emotional and upset about it. She said, you got to be kidding me. I never saw that. When you were raising us, you looked like you were having so much fun. I said, well, baby, I was having so much fun. But at night, I got to tell you, you're usually looking at the ceiling going, dude, I got to pay payroll tomorrow. I got that Amex bill. Adam's got his Amex bill, right? Even when your business is going great, right? Just the thought of it. And so I would go back to my 25-year-old self and say, hey, keep clawing. Keep trying. You're doing the right thing. This isn't easy. It's not supposed to be easy. And I would remind myself of that.
Max, when your day comes to leave this earth, how do you want to be remembered? How do you define your legacy?
There are things I can tell you and things I can't tell you because they're still private.
Whatever you're open to sharing.
What I'll tell you is that I want Y Chroma. People say, who's your hero, Max? Is your hero Ralph Lauren, for instance? Ralph Lauren's a freaking amazing guy. Ralph Lauren should be anybody's hero anywhere in business, certainly if you're in fashion. But with all due respect to Ralph, who pioneered the idea of reinvention. Ralph was born Ralph Lifshitz. Mm-hmm. He's a Jew from Brooklyn. He's not a cowboy from Montana. He's not British aristocracy. He's a Jew from the Bronx. And he wanted to redefine himself. And my brand is about reinvention and this beautiful creation of the person you want to be when you're old enough to see what that is. Ralph laid the source code for that shit. So we should all tip our hats to Ralph. But if you want to know who I'm meant to be, if you want to know who I'm meant to be, it's Martha Stewart. Martha took the most boring, dowdy thing, this kind of dowdy vision of the old school homemaker, and she turned it into the best thing. And she created a fashion and media and homeware empire around that.
Legend.
And so today people know Y Chroma as this really great fashion brand that's taken off, right? But what you'll see us do in the coming years, and what I want people to remember for, is building something like Martha built for men who are now going to go through their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s in ways that no generation in human civilization has ever seen. And that for me is not just about fashion. It's not just about leather goods, the skincare and supplements that you'll see us producing just for these guys. It's not just about the media properties you'll see us build and the educational travel and experience around that, our own podcast.
Yes.
It's about creating a world that these guys think of as being a home where they are deeply respected and loved and seen. And if I do that, wow, that's what I want. I want those guys to say, the day I pass, first of all, I hope I'll be pissed if it's a minute less than my 100th birthday. I'll be furious.
Don't worry, we're gonna have your head on ice. Don't worry. Ted Williams style. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's right. You'll put me in cryo, but I want guys to think
colorful.
I want them to think, hey, he built this place for us, and that's what I hope. And there's another side to my life I'll talk to you in a couple of years about that people don't know. But there's another creative endeavor. I also want people to remember.
I love that. I love that so much, and I'm going to put a pin in this one because I love boomerang guests. On Friday, I'm interviewing a guest that I've known for 6 years. She was one of my first 50 guests, and I love the boomerang because we recap and we now have an accountable time capsule of accountability, right? We have a time cap. That's another fun fucking thing about having a podcast, Max. It's a time capsule. This is a living, breathing time capsule. So let's bring it home here. This is my encore that I come back on stage. I mean, I could close the show with what you just said right there because it was beautiful, beautiful. Max, what is the single greatest piece of advice that you received that you take action on every day?
The single greatest piece of advice I ever received that I take action on every day. It's interesting. My uncle Alan is if you're from Seattle, many people know Alan. Alan Israel is an attorney, probably best known for his work for Paul Allen, the Microsoft co-founder.
Huh.
But Alan is among the smartest human beings I've ever met. He and my father, two of the smartest people I've ever met. My father could have just paid for my university, but instead put money in trust and made me go to my uncle Alan, Paul Allen's lawyer, with a budget every month. And I learned so much from Alan. But one day I watched Alan. I came into his office as he was engaged in a negotiation on behalf of a billionaire to build a sports stadium or something. And the attorney in the headline said something that was just shitty. And Alan didn't rise to take the bait. He was polite and civil and kind and made his point forcefully, but like a gentleman. And what did he say? He said, avoid gratuitous swipes. And I always thought a gratuity was a tip, but a gratuitous thing is something that's unnecessary. I had to go to my dictionary for that. He didn't tell me. He said, go find your dictionary and look it up. And this idea that there are so many things in life, and especially in the snarky world of social media, where we're tempted to be snarky and make a little swipe at someone. I'm tempted. You deal with a lot of frustration, especially as an entrepreneur and a founder and a CEO. You deal with a lot of frustration, and almost every day I hear my Uncle Alan's words saying, "Hey, you don't have to take a little swipe at someone. Avoid gratuitous swipes." And by extension, I think what Alan was telling me is you can be a net contributor of kindness and good vibes and good energy in the world, even in the most competitive, fierce, in a fiercely competitive environment. You can be that, and I remember that every day.
Sage.
Avoid gratuitous swipe, folks.
Sage advice, especially in this world of political divide here in the States, where people are riled up, and it's a cauldron. It's a powder keg of emotion, and they're trying to divide us apart. That's their goal, is to divide us, and we need to come together here. Max, last but not least, by all textbook definitions, you have reached multiple levels of success in your life. And some people early on, they define success by money, but I've learned that money is not what defines success. Max Israel, at this point of your life, how do you define success?
The ability to do exactly what I want to do, even though those things are hard, but the ability to put my time and energy into things that fulfill me. I'm not accountable to a transactional job. And you yourself made this decision many years ago. You went from a transactional job to a place where you accept responsibility for the consequences of being an entrepreneur, but you have you have success. You wake up every day and you say, this is the creative vision I have, and I'm going to go execute it. Or and I'm going to change that, and I'm going to evolve that. But those come from you, and that's a privilege. For me, the biggest hallmark of wealth, the biggest hallmark of success, is the ability to follow that instinct and follow that vision, and not have to stop and report back to anybody else.
Bonus question. What's
It's a bonus round.
What's on the horizon? What's next for Max? What's next for Y Chroma? You kind of alluded to the extension, the brand extension, but let's go a little bit deeper there. What's next? What are you working on yourself?
I'll give you a two-part answer on that. I love language stuff, so I need to improve my Portuguese. Over the years, I've been...
Obrigado. That's all I know.
There you go. I've been blessed to learn Spanish and French, living here in Europe. And just from a practical point of view, my Portuguese is good, not great. But what do I want people to see over the next 5 years? I want people to watch Y Chroma blossom and come to see it as more than just this great fashion brand, but something that is special and that really celebrates the incredible thing that a man's life can be from 50 to 100 years old in ways that nobody does. And when we talked before about kind of heroes and the kind of color logic behind Y Chroma, I think I forgot part of the answer. Part of the answer was Steve McQueen. People look at Steve McQueen or somebody like him, right, as a kind of hero. And I think there's something to that, right? What is it that makes our heroes, and how can we help our guys become their own heroes? And so 5 years from now, what I want people to see is that Ychroma becomes, lives up to its potential of really being a full-throated lifestyle brand. As for the other surprise, I'll have to boomerang back to you in 24 months.
Yes.
And
There's a
and
teaser.
I think people will not believe what I show them. And it has nothing to do with it is kind of tangentially related to Ychroma. You could say it has a kind of association with Ychroma.
And there's your teaser, everybody. You're gonna
See
have
y'all
to
in
come
24
back.
months. We'll be back.
See you all in 24 months. Well, I want to thank Max for joining us today. If you're curious about what a brand totally focused on men over 40 looks like, check out ychroma.com. And Max and his team was generous enough to offer a discount code, 20% off your first purchase. To podcast listeners, you're gonna have to click on the link in the show notes to get it. I'm not just dropping that link on the audio. No one reads a freaking URL. You're gonna have to click in the show notes. I want everyone, please, my audience, check this shit out. It's fucking dope. It's awesome, especially for anyone who's in my demographic who's looking for something. And everyone listening, if this show meant something to you, leave a review. Rating it goes a long way. If you want more information, hit me up on email, adam@nhptalentgroup.com. Follow us on Instagram at nhptalent. You know where to find out more at thepozcast.com. Remember, be good to yourself, be better to others, and catch us next week for another great episode of the Pozcast. That's how we do it, folks.